and sport fishing has been my passion since as long as I can remember.
Got him, buddy.
Yeah. Okay, I've never caught a muskie before.
That's the way to start a day.
He's not very good. He's an upgrade.
Okay, it's good. So we need 5 of those.
Oh yeah! Oh yeah! Finally! Let's go! Yes! No! Number 5! Oh! Yes! No one lost it!
You have to blame a banana. You should practice harder.
Join me, and together, let's inspire the next generation. Let's go!
All righty. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I can see there's a bunch of you logged in already. Hi, Tony. How you doing? I want to welcome everyone to another Shimano school. Tonight we are with Averie Rose Bonin, the hostess of Hooked, her own show. If those of you who don't know, Averie is 13 and a half years old.
Yep.
And has been doing this a very long time already. She's actually probably got more experience fishing than most of the adults I know. So, Averie, how are you doing tonight, hon?
I'm doing very good. I'm excited to be here. Excited to get talking to you and share my story with everyone.
All right. Well, listen, we're going to have a good time. We're live on both Facebook and on YouTube tonight. So, folks, I see Blaine's there. Hey, Blaine, how you doing? Piscando, Texas, how are you? Hope you're doing well. He's over on our YouTube channel. So, folks, do me a favor, like we do every week. Please let me know in the comment section where you're checking in from. Always great to see. We have had people from all over the world, Averie, watching these Shimano schools, and it's a great source for people to learn. So let's start off tonight, Averie, and explain to people what it is that you do. What was the reason for you deciding to do what you do, get into fishing?
Okay, well, that is a long story. So a few years ago, I think it might even be 3 years ago now. Man, time goes by. So I went to the Bassmaster Classic with my family members, everyone in my family, my immediate family. And so we went to the Classic, and I was so excited. I had an absolutely amazing time. It was in South Carolina. And we watched Jordan Lee win for the second time, second year in a row. I met so many new people, and I had a great experience there. And when I got home, I wanted to tell all my friends all about it. And I assumed that most of them would know what the Classic is, because I live right near Lake Erie in a small town, and a lot of my friends are fishermen, and none of them really knew what it was. Only a couple of my close friends, a couple of my guy friends knew what the Bassmaster Classic was, but I wanted them to be able to experience amazing things and meet new people just like I did. And I thought that they would enjoy fishing. And I think that is why I started it, because I wanted them to get out fishing and get to meet new people and have experiences like I did at the Classic.
Awesome. And yeah, you've been on fire ever since then. I remember seeing you at that Classic, and you were like a kid in a candy store. You remind me a lot of me at a little bit older than you, but going to the Toronto Sportsman Show or all the spring fishing shows, and you get to see people who are on TV, and you get to meet new people, and it's awesome. I'm really glad that you continued to do this. So let's talk about Hooked a little bit here, Averie, and let me just say hi to a few people before we move on. Brandon from Oregon, how you doing? Richard from Texas. Dave Doucette from Tottenham. He's one of our boys. Irving, Texas in the house. Raleigh, North Carolina. Will, how are you? Steve Farrell from Cambridge, Brent from St. Thomas. We got Plainfield, Illinois in the house, Bob Cajun, Ontario, Kingsport, Tennessee here. So we have a bunch of people. Tony, I hope you're doing well. So one thing we love to do every time we do this, and we do this every week, Averie, is I like to basically get a little bit of background on what you're doing, but more so talk about something interesting to the people watching, which for me, when it comes to you, would be your desire or drive to get more kids into fishing. Where did that come from? I mean, I remember pictures of you when you were just a wee little thing, catching bluegill off the dock with your dad. So what's up with trying to get kids into fishing? What drove that?
Well, so I've been fishing for a very long time. As you said, it's been since I was 7 days old. That was my very first fishing trip I went to in Humber Bay Park with my dad because we lived in the city at the time. I obviously don't remember it because it was a very long time ago, but I have had incredible experiences out in the outdoors, and I've spent a lot of time bonding with my family when I have been fishing. And I just want other people, like I said when I was talking about the classic, I want other people and other kids especially to be able to have those same experiences and be able to bond with their family members just like I did. And also, I feel like there are a lot of kids nowadays that are on screens a lot. I am too. And so fishing is a way to get outside, get off the screens. And I really want to grow our sport. I feel like the industry is pretty small and I want to get bigger. So that's why I focus a lot on kids and getting them into fishing.
Oh, those are some phenomenal reasons, Averie. So with what you're doing, anybody who's been in this industry long enough pretty much realizes that it's predominantly male, but there is a massive growth in the female market. I mean, I'm seeing more and more women fishing, and it doesn't matter what kind of fishing, whether it's in musky fishing or fly fishing or conventional bass fishing. We're seeing more and more of it happening. But have you found it difficult at all, or have you found the community to be very supportive? Being young, being female, and trying to break into this industry, has there been a lot of support for you?
Oh yes, there has been tremendous support from so many different people. I've gotten messages of people who their kids wanted me to take them out fishing, and I've had a lot of support from companies like Shimano, and I recently got support from Smokercraft boats. So yes, there's been a lot of support in the industry that I have gotten. So I'm lucky for that.
So we already got a question for you. Now, folks, as you're tuning in, again, we appreciate you joining us for another Shimano School here on both our YouTube channel and our Facebook channel. But if you have a question, fire it in. I see your brother Luke just jumped in on YouTube. Luke saying, hi, Averie.
Oh, yeah.
So here's a question from you from our Facebook. Peter's asking, what's the best fish catch ever? What's the best fish you've caught, Averie?
Well, I can't say what like the exact best fish is because I've caught so many fish and I've loved every single fish catch I've caught. But one of my most memorable catches is my biggest fish catch, and it was sturgeon fishing. Anthony Morashini took me out, and I caught a 140-ish pound sturgeon. It took me 45 minutes to reel in, and it was so crazy. A couple times, Anthony and my dad were asking if I wanted to hand the rod off, but I was not letting that happen because I'm stubborn and I wanted to catch it all by myself. So that's probably one of my favorite fish catches.
I'm going to see if I could pull that one up, Averie, because that sturgeon was, and that was the best fish Anthony's ever had caught in his boat as well. Isn't that the biggest one, the biggest sturgeon ever?
Yeah, it was the biggest one caught in his boat.
Yeah, it's an insane fish. And if I remember right, you guys were using like a Takota 600. So you almost ran out of line a couple times on that fish.
Yeah. It went out like 800 feet, and they were yelling at me to tell them what the spool, like how much line was on the spool, just in case. But they didn't expect it to go out like 800 feet, 900 feet, and I was screaming at them because I didn't want it to run out of line while I was fighting it.
Oh man, you got a ton of great pictures up there. And for folks, everybody watching this, if you want to follow along with Averie's journey, you can obviously follow her under Averie Rose on Facebook, and she does have a YouTube channel as well. So you can follow her there. She's always doing great informational tip videos. And I mean, for me, especially if you have kids out there, folks, this is the perfect way to try to get them invested and interested. There's an interesting stat, and I don't know if you know this one or not, Averie. You probably do because you know all about getting kids involved in fishing. But they say that if a parent brings their kid fishing before the age of 10, they're like 80% more likely to continue fishing throughout their life.
Oh, I think that's true. I believe that is very true. We also, my brother likes to fish too, but he gets pretty seasick. And so that has held him back a bit. He doesn't go on the water as much. He likes to fish from land. And but my sister, she will go out and cast for 9 straight hours. And she absolutely loves fishing. So does my brother. It's just harder for him to get out because of his seasickness. So
we got a couple. There's that picture of that beast of a sturgeon, and that was the St. Clair River, correct?
Yep.
St. Clair River on the Michigan side, which for those of you who are wondering about sturgeon, I mean, they're bucket list fish. My only opportunities to catch them have been out in British Columbia. I know the West Coast has them. Here in Ontario, it is a protected species, no fishing for. But on the Michigan side, they do have an open season. So you can see right away, Blaine just jumped in here as well. He says, we need to get you down to Shimano headquarters and get you out in the saltwater. Have you ever done any saltwater fishing, Averie?
No, I actually, I went to Florida a couple of years ago with my family for the first time. My whole big family, and we were supposed to go out saltwater fishing, and we were going to rent a boat, but there was an algae bloom and a toxic algae bloom, and we couldn't go out. Our trip was canceled. So I've never been fishing in saltwater. That is definitely one thing that I would love to do, and soon, because I've always wanted to catch like a shark or something humongous in salt water. So
I don't blame you. And I'm going to warn you, once you get into saltwater fishing, it's going to ruin you because it is completely and utterly addictive. And, you know, whether you're going to fish as a bass fisherman, you know, you're going to find the same thing that I did, Averie, is that the inshore, near shore stuff you're going to feel right at home with because we use the same techniques, the same gear. But when you get to that offshore stuff that Blaine's talking about, and you know, Blaine in that picture he's got in his avatar there is probably hooked up to about an 800-pound tuna in that picture.
Whoa.
I mean, there's some crazy stuff you can do.
So cool.
So here's a question from Will saying, what's your YouTube channel? So it's under Averie Rose as well, correct?
Yes, that's my YouTube channel.
Yeah, I can actually show you guys right here. I'll zoom into it so you can see what's going on. There she is right there. So you can follow her on YouTube or on Facebook under the same thing, Averie Rose.
Yep.
That makes things pretty easy. So, all right, questions are starting to come in, Averie. So, guys, do me a favor. Everybody who's watching, guys and girls alike, please do me a favor. Click the share button down on the bottom there. That really helps us get the word out. And if you got a niece, nephew, son, daughter, whoever that you think would love fishing or is interested in fishing, tag them in the comment section. That really will get them out there. This video is going to live on both of the YouTube channels and on the Shimano Facebook channel, so they'll be able to watch it after. But if you tag them in there, That's a perfect way to get them to watch this. We're going to do this for the next 45 minutes. We've already done 15 minutes and we haven't even started, Averie. So let's see. Where do we got? Hi from Central Florida. Hey, Edward. How you doing? All right. So Steve's asking you, what lake or body of water to fish is number one on your bucket list?
So for a while now, I've wanted to fish on all of the Great Lakes. I fished on two of them. I fished on Ontario and Erie. I have been to Huron, like at a beach, but I've never actually fished in Huron. And I want to fish Superior, Michigan. That is few lakes that are on my bucket list. I've always wanted to fish all of the Great Lakes. And I don't really have like a specific lake that I want to go to, but I would really like to go somewhere in the Amazon or in the Amazon and fish for like exotic species like a peacock bass. Or I've always wanted to go to places in Europe and catch the ginormous, like 7-pound perch. Those look so cool. They're almost like our bass here in Canada, and I've always wanted to go fishing for them.
Some great choices you got there, Averie. Wise beyond your years here. All right, so we got a question from Paulo, and he's asking you for a bit of help here because I have seen you fish a Ned rig. Mm-hmm. We actually filmed a show together where you pretty much all day used a jerkbait and a Ned rig, and you caught the tar out of them. So what's your favorite finesse setup for largemouth?
My favorite finesse setup for largemouth. I absolutely love to use a Texas rigged Senko, for largemouth. That's one of the main things that I used when I was younger, especially here in Long Point Bay because of the weeds. It's so crazy how many weeds there are here. And so I would use a Texas rigged Senko instead of a wacky rigged Senko because of how weedy it is here. But I would always skip it under like docks and piers. And so that was one of my favorite finesse setups for largemouth.
All right, and that is a great finesse setup. So the debate rages on when it comes to throwing Senkos.
Oh, yeah.
The further south you go, you'll see more and more people use a bait casting setup.
Yeah.
The further north you come, especially when we're throwing 5, 4, and 3-inch Senkos, the more we're seeing people use a spinning setup. What setup do you pick to throw that Texas rig?
What setup? So I like to use the SLX rods. I got a couple back here. So when I'm skipping docks and stuff, I usually use a SLX spinning rod with a Nasky 2500 reel because I have not practiced enough to use a bait caster. I get a lot of bird's nests when I'm skipping under docks and stuff. So I usually use a spinning rod for that. But when I'm in like the lily pads and the thick, I like to use a Texas rigged craw with a big 1-ounce weight, and that's when I get my bait casting setup out. I usually use the Shimano SLX rod and reel combo. I use my SLX DC because I love the DC. I love the noise it makes. That's probably my favorite part of the DC. And it really helps me get those fish out of the thick of the lily pads.
That's a good call right there. And so you're using Power Pro on your reels as well, both spinning and casting?
Yes. When I'm fishing like the thick, heavy cover, I usually use 60-pound braid, 65-pound braid because it is so thick and I don't want my line to snap. And when I'm skipping docks, I usually use around like 30-ish, 20 or 30. It's a little lighter, a little easier to get under the docks. And stuff.
Yeah, you're definitely going to get better casting performance. And I always tell people, Averie, when we're talking about spinning reels versus bait casters, you know, I say really 30 or 20 and under on your spinning setups, and 30 and over on your bait casting setup seems to really work really well for casting, line management, and everything else.
Yeah.
So you see another person agrees with you wholeheartedly. Mark is saying, me too, Avery, Michigan and Superior are on his radar. And you've got a Bahamas 87 is saying you should come down to the Bahamas. Now that would be a cool trip.
That would be really cool. My mom and dad went down to the Bahamas before, and they said they absolutely loved it there. I would love to go to the Bahamas. It would be really, really cool there. They say there's little lizards that run around too. They'd be fun to catch too.
Yeah, and you can find those little lizards in Florida as well. They're pretty much everywhere down south, which is fun. They're fun in itself. When I used to take Christian down when he was young, that's what we would do. We would just let him kind of roam around and chase lizards, which is, it's great. If it keeps you busy, all the better.
Yeah.
All right.
When we were at the Classic in Carolina, my brother and sister would chase around the lizards and catch them too.
There you go. Perfect. All right. So species-wise, you're starting to spread out a little bit more. Especially with your show Hooked. Let's talk about Hooked a bit.
Okay.
In the beginning, Avery, I remember you were doing videos for anything, pike, everything, walleye. I know you fish with our good buddy Paul Powis. Hi, Christina. How you doing? You fish with a bunch of different people, Anthony, obviously. But when Hooked came along, and after going to the Classic, you had a drive to learn about tournament fishing.
Yes.
So what is the premise behind Hooked? For the people who haven't seen it, what is the premise behind the show?
Well, so basically, it is all, we go fishing in our area, like mostly we fish Lake Erie, and we go and try and catch our biggest 5 limit of fish, like in a tournament. We have the hours of a tournament, and we weigh the fish at the end of the day, and we try and beat what the tournament winning bag is in that area. So an example, I fished with my sister actually in a for season 2, because we are having a season 2 of Hooked not too long ago, and we went to the east end of the lake, and Clara had never gone to the big lake, so we tried to catch our 5 biggest smallmouth, and it was a great day. So that was lots of fun. And we have fished largemouth and smallmouth, and we've done mixed bag shows as well. So that is really the premise of Hooked. We try and beat the tournament bags in the area.
Perfect. And you've had some rather seasoned, well-experienced people as your co-hosts as well. I mean, I think Paul Castellano has probably spent more time with you fishing than any of the hosts that you've fished with. And he's a great, for those of you who don't know Paul Castellano, I mean, in my opinion, bar none, the best guide on the Niagara River when it comes to steelhead, smallmouth, I mean, fly fishing for carp. Very, very well-versed in a lot of fisheries. So, how fun is it to fish with guys who have a lot of experience, or girls who have a lot of experience, Avery? Do you find it's like a fast learning curve? Is that the best way for you to learn?
Oh, it's so much fun. Like when we went out last year and we filmed, you and me, when we filmed an episode of Hooked, I learned so much and had a great time catching the smallmouth. I learn so much from these people. They teach me a lot, and without them, I wouldn't be as good as an angler, or I wouldn't be where I am today without going out with you guys and learning. So I thank everyone that has taken me out and taught me, because without you, I would not be here today. You have been a great help to me, and I have had so much fun learning from everyone that has taken me out.
Well, that's awesome. And again, believe it or not, Avery, even though, you think that it's all about you learning, and I've learned this a long time ago, is that no matter the skill level of the person you fish with, there's always something that each angler will take from the experience. Yeah. Right? So, I mean, I always pay attention to, no matter the skill level of the person or the experience level of the person that I fish with, there's always something that they do that maybe is a little bit outside the box of what I'm used to doing or what you're used to doing, and you could get a better idea on how to do something. So Basic Fishing is actually saying, hi, Avery. They're over on our YouTube channel, and they asked, what was your most frustrating fishing moment?
Okay, so I'm going to tell everybody a little bit of a story. When I go out with my dad, sometimes there is, like, I've gone out for 8 hours and only caught a few fish. And sometimes Dad just puts the camera down for a second. I don't blame him. He's been watching me fish all day, and he loves to fish too. So he picks up a rod and just casts it out. And he catches one right away, like on the first cast. And I've been fishing for almost 8 hours, and he caught one right away. That's a little bit of a joke. Me and my dad have like an inside joke. But yeah, so that's pretty frustrating. And another frustrating thing is going out, and if you have to go to the washroom and you have nowhere to go. So that is also another frustrating thing when I'm out on the water.
Both frustrating. And, you know, I know your dad loves to fish because I've known your dad a long time.
Yeah.
Did he ever tell you the story of when I set up a bait caster for him with a swim bait on it, and I told him, here, cast this. You can't backlash it.
No.
Did he ever tell you that story?
No.
He took that rod and reel combo, and he wound up. And the thing I didn't expect him to do was rip the swim bait off when he casted. And I mean, he probably created the biggest backlash I have ever seen in my entire history of fishing. It was unbelievable. And I was like, only your dad could have done that. It was an awesome moment. It was back when we were doing there were seminar nights we were doing. I think it was in Kitchener. He did that at the pond. So next time you could bug him about that a bit.
Okay, I'll let him know when we're done.
Here's another one saying, hey, watching from Trinidad and Tobago.
Wow.
How you doing? I hope you guys are having a good night. Thank you for tuning in on our YouTube channel, obviously. So do you know Roy Leva?
No.
So Roy is the fishiest guy I know. He works at Shimano headquarters down in Charleston, South Carolina. And he's asking you, do you keep a log of your fishing?
Do I keep a log? No, that was actually something. So my mom suggested me to do. I would actually like to start a log. And another thing I would like to try out is the Angler app. You can keep logs on where you're fishing and like the temperatures and everything on your phone on an app. I feel like it would be easier for me to use the app because if I actually kept a log, I would probably lose the book or something, like if I wrote it down. So it would probably be easier for me to use the Angler app. I haven't set that up yet, but I would like to set that up and see if it helps me out because I think it would be very helpful in the long run.
It would absolutely be helpful. And, you know, the good news is for you, Avery, it's not like when Roy and I started fishing that, you know, we're running paper and pen. I mean, you could do it on your phone now. You can do it on an app like you mentioned. The one thing you will notice as you keep fishing, if your memory is good, it's not that big of a deal. But if you tend to be a little bit forgetful about, you know, it was cloudy that day and the wind was coming from this direction and this is how I caught them, the app would definitely be a helpful thing for you, for sure.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see. We got another question. Dave is asking, what's your long-term goals? Is it tournaments? Is it TV? Is it becoming a professional angler? What are Avery's long-term goals?
Long-term goals. Well, I would love to continue doing YouTube and TV. Like I said, season 2 for Hooked has been approved, and we are already filming the episodes for it. So I would love to keep doing TV and YouTube and maybe do tournaments. I'm very competitive. I've already fished a couple tournaments before. I fished one with Paul my very first tournament, and we actually ended up coming first in that tournament. And then I fished one with my uncle last summer, and we came 7th, and that was very fun. My uncle and I did pretty well. We weren't expecting to get 7th. We weren't expecting to get that well, but I would like to fish tournaments in the future. I don't know if like big tournaments like the Elite Series or the Bassmaster Classic, but I would like to fish tournaments because I am very competitive. I actually play competitive hockey, and I think it brings out the competitive side of me. So I think that I would like to fish tournaments when I'm older.
Well, here's one from Blaine. Long-term goals should include marketing at Shimano. Just saying. That'd be a pretty good one. You'd be staying in an industry that is what you love, and that would be pretty fun.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That would be fun.
All right, so here's another one for you from Basic Fishing. Okay, so how do they watch your show Hooked? I know it was Bell 5 TV is where this all started, and season 2 is going to air there as well. So if someone wants to see it, how do they get to your show, Averie?
Well, it is going on WFN in the States, and I believe it is also going to be going on the Sportsman Show.
Sportsman's Channel Canada?
Yeah, here in Canada.
Yep.
And I think that eventually we will put it on my YouTube channel so that people who don't have those like TV networks can see it.
That's a great answer, because his next thing, he said, I mean online, I'm in New Zealand. So yes, Basic Fishing. So yeah, eventually, and typically what happens when you're airing shows with networks is there's a time limit or a contract where they will be exclusive to airing that show. But once again, once Averie gets the rights to the show back and she's intending on putting it on YouTube, that will instantly make it available worldwide, which is always a great thing. You can reach more people in more homes that way, Averie, right?
For sure.
All right. So, Averie, let's talk something fishing-wise. We found out about what your favorite, or basically what your bucket list lakes are, and we found out what your most crazy catch is, and we found out, what your most frustrating moments are. But I'm going to ask you something. What is the one technique that you feel you would like to know better?
One technique that I'd like to know better? Well, that's probably frog fishing. I absolutely love topwater blow-ups. It's so cool to watch the fish eat the bait out of the water. But I struggle to get a good hook set. So I'd like to learn more about frog fishing and topwater baits in general, and help my hook set get better so I can land these fish easier. And another technique that I would like to know better and learn more about is probably fishing big, ginormous swim baits. I got a couple humongous swim baits from Jackal. There's one actually right here on my table. This Gansha is a humongous perch swim bait, and I've only fished it a couple times, but I don't really I haven't caught a fish on it yet. So I'd like to learn places and ways to catch the fish on those humongous swim baits, because like I said, I really haven't caught any on them. So
in both cases, I mean, it's basically time on the water when you're working it, but your setup is going to be one of the biggest things you can do. So what are you fishing? So I can help you with the frog fishing, because that's probably my number one thing I love to do. But what setup do you use? Are you using a 7-foot rod, I assume?
Yes.
Heavy, medium, heavy?
Usually I use heavy rods when I'm fishing for frogs, because it's very, very thick cover that I'm fishing them in, like lily pads and like thick weeds and grassy areas. So I usually use a heavy rod to get them out of there as fast and easy as I can.
Yep.
So that's usually what I use, like 65-pound braid.
Perfect.
and fast, high gear ratio reels.
Yep. So you're using an XT. So you're using, the XG model reel. So 8.2, 8.3 to 1.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, perfect. So what is the problem you're having? It's just your hookup ratio? Is that where the problem's happening?
Yeah, it's just my hookup ratio that is like, that I'm having trouble with.
Okay, so usually when people miss fish on a frog, it's because they swing before the frog is in the right spot in the fish's mouth, right?
Probably my problem.
Yeah, and it's usually, Avery, it's one of the toughest things to do because the natural reaction, you get startled when a fish eats, right? You get a little bit startled, and then the first reaction is to pull back as fast as you can. But there's one tip I can give you when you're fishing a frog, because 90% of the time it's because there's no slack in the line when we're using a braid like Power Pro because there's zero stretch. And if we swing quickly, the fish never has a chance to grab the frog and turn and start to swim away. And that's when you want to hit them.
Yeah.
So when you reel a frog, what position is your rod in?
It's usually pointing like right at.
So you aim at the frog and you kind of just reel it along through the cover. So I want you to try something. I want you to go out the next time you frog fish. And I never want you to see your rod come down past 11 o'clock. Okay. So between 11 and 12 o'clock, you point your rod straight up when you're working that frog.
Okay.
It's going to do a couple things for you. One, it's going to keep your line angle a bit higher. So you're not going to get caught in the slit in the lily pads as much, which is very frustrating. When you fish a frog and the line gets in there and then the nose of the frog gets in there. It's going to help you get over the cover a little better. But what it's going to force you to do is when that fish bites, you can't set the hook when your rod's straight up.
Yeah.
It forces you to lower your rod. And when you lower your rod, you give that fish a bit of slack. And then he turns, then you have to hit him. So it's just that little 2 seconds. I've seen you set the hook. You're a violent little hook set on you. So it's not a matter of you not having the power to set the hook. It's probably more technique related. So start at 11. When you get a blow up, drop the rod tip, reel up the slack, and then set the hook. And then let me know how your hookup ratio goes.
Okay.
All right. Here's another thing here. Christina. Hi, Christina. How you doing? She says her daughter is 10 years old and goes through stages where she really enjoys fishing, and other days she's just not into it. Avery, as a young angler, do you have any feedback that I can do to continue to inspire and encourage her to feel the same passion I have for the sport?
Well, one of the things I would say is she's still pretty young, so I would take her to kids fishing derbies. I love kids fishing derbies. Still even, they are so much fun, and they aren't just fishing. There is like face painting and fun activities, and I've even gone to fishing derbies with like bouncy castles in them. So that's a fun way to get them to enjoy it more, because they can be excited and look forward to having not just fishing, but so much fun with the activities there as well. So that's one of the tips I would give. And another tip I give is when I go out, I love to snack when I'm fishing, so that I'm always busy doing something, even if I'm not catching fish. Because sometimes, like, I know if I take out my brother or sister, they can get bored in between, like, not catching fish. So we eat, and that way they're doing something and they're not bored, so that they're still enjoying their time out on the water.
All right, let me drop that down. Well, that's some great points there. And Christina, hopefully that helps you out. I like seeing this. So Local Boys Fishing is saying, caught my first frogfish today. Oh, you're ruined forever now. I mean, once you catch a frogfish, that will quickly become your favorite way to catch fish. So congratulations, Local Boys Fishing, on your first frogfish. Here's a great sign here. So Clayton's saying, keep killing it, Avery. He's looking forward to fishing with you and your dad when the COVID thing is over. And I think we're all looking forward to a little bit more travel and a little bit more fishing with friends. So let's talk a little bit about, let's see. let's talk about that mag swim bait thing you're talking about, Avery. I think that'd be a good one to address. So you're saying you've thrown it a few times, and I know a few tricks regarding the big swim bait game. And I've actually, again, much like you dealing with people who are experienced at it, most of my information comes from, either fishing with or talking to industry pros. So when it came to swim baits, the guy I talked to back in the day was Bill Siementel. And I don't know if you know Bill or not, but Bill is like the BBZ Spro swim baits. He is like one of the big original California swim bait guys. So you asked when, where, and how, basically. And those are the three main questions you want to ask when you're talking about throwing a bait. So the first thing I'll talk about always is the setup. So what are you throwing that big swim bait around?
So when I use the big swim bait, I'm usually using a baitcaster, SLX rod and reel combo, and I have lighter line, like the 30-ish pound
braid. You're using Power Pro?
Yes, Power Pro braid, and I usually have a fluorocarbon leader, and I get bit off a lot by pike, and that's one of the problems I have.
It's expensive with those big baits.
Yeah, that's one of the problems I have too, because they bite it off before I can actually catch a bass. And actually, I went fishing using a swim jig, and I used a titanium leader because the pike were biting that off too. So I wonder, do you think that would make a difference if I used a leader?
So there's a couple things here. And the first one, and this is when it comes to baits like the bait you had up, it's more of a glide bait. So a lot of the guys are throwing heavy mono, 20, 25, but mostly 25, if not 30-pound mono, because they want that extra stretch when you're fishing a bait like that. The challenge happens, Avery, when you throw a big bait like that. That's, 6, 7, 8 ounces of weight. And you hook them on a rod with braided line, and the braid's got no stretch, and the bait's got lots of leverage when the fish jumps, it becomes very hard to keep them hooked up. So when you go to mono has that much more stretch in it. So you go 20 or 25-pound mono, and I would recommend with a bait like that, 25-pound mono. And you're reeling it in when you get bit. It's got that bit of give, so it lets the fish take the bait better. But it also, when you hook them, if the fish jumps, the stretch keeps the line tight.
Yeah.
More so than getting that slack and then the fish pops off when you're using braid. The other thing is, opposite of what I explained to you about frog fishing, when you're reeling in one of those glide baits, the action is really done with the reel. It's not done with the rod. Your rod is not up. Your rod is down, pointed at the bait. And your reel is basically a little twitch every so often, straight reel, glide, twitch. And what you'll find is that bait, especially the jackal swim baits, they'll get this little dart. And if you see a fish following it and you do that and you twitch hard down on the handle and push the rod forward, the bait will actually spin around and look at the fish.
Oh, I've seen that happen. I do put on like a fluorocarbon leader, like a pretty long fluorocarbon leader that is attached, that is like tied to the braid, and I think that has more stretch than the braid too.
Yes.
But I don't know if it has as much stretch as the mono filament though.
Yeah, no, the mono is ideal. The more stretch you can get when you're doing big glide baits like that or big swim baits like that, it's always the best way to do it. And I mean, unless you're fishing them in incredibly heavy cover, which you're not, right? You can't really throw those big treble hooks around that heavy cover. So, and then the other thing is, and this was a tip that I was taught from Bill. If you've ever seen, do you ever see a minnow swimming in the open?
Yeah.
They're not very active, are they? They kind of just move along ever so slowly, right? And the reason they do that is because they don't want to draw attention to themselves. But what a minnow will do is a minnow will swim along, and then if there's a boulder or a piece of weed, they'll kick and change directions when they get to that structure. So that they can, if something's following them, they can move out of the way, right? So when you fish your big swim baits, think of it that way. The slower and, little twitch, little things like that. And then when you see a boulder or a piece of wood or a thing, give it a hard crank and get it to do something different. And that can trigger a strike for you as well. So try to make it look as natural as possible.
Okay.
Okay. It's like bringing in a crayfish across the bottom, or a goby when you're dragging a tube. You don't make it go up and down because that's not what they do.
Yeah.
Same thing with the swim baits. Don't be too quick with them. Don't be too erratic with them. Just nice and simple, nice and slow. All right.
Okay.
All right. So here's another couple questions. Basic Fishing is asking, do you plan on ever targeting the notorious snakehead? Do you know much about snakehead, Avery?
Yeah, I've actually watched, like, my brother absolutely loves, like, BBC documentaries and, like, documentaries in general, like National Geographic. And I've seen a snakehead documentary and how they are invasive in a lot of places. And I think that it would be cool to catch a snakehead. I've also caught what are they called? They look kind of like a snakehead. Oh, it slipped my mind what they're called. A bowfin, that's what they're called. I've caught one of those, and they're kind of like the snakehead. I'm pretty sure they're actually related to the snakehead somehow. My dad and I looked it up once because we thought it was a snakehead at first because it looked so much like one, but it was actually a bowfin. So I feel like, yeah, it would be cool to target a snakehead one day.
I agree. And you know what? They love frogs. They absolutely love destroying frogs. So yeah, that's on my list as well. So Paulo is asking, do you use a Uni Knot or an FJ knot or an FG knot to connect Power Pro to your leader? What are you doing for a connection knot, Avery?
So I use the Uni Knot. Actually, I learned it a couple years ago. And as soon as I learned it, I got pretty good at it right away. And now my dad makes me tie all the knots, like the Uni knots, because whenever he does it, he breaks it and he gets frustrated. So I tie all of the Uni knots to connect to the Power Pro to the fluorocarbon.
I just texted your dad. I told him you're throwing them under the bus.
I'm pretty sure he's watching this, so he's going to hear it.
That's all right. It's all good. There you go. Luke jumped in. He said, yes, I do. He does love watching National Geographic.
Yes, yes.
All right. So here's one from Local Boys. Can you talk about deep water bass? So I know you have a bit of experience doing this, and you've gotten really good using your electronics as well.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about deep water bass fishing, Avery.
So I love deep water bass fishing for smallmouth, and I love to use side imaging and down imaging to find big, huge rock piles and shoals. That's what I look for most of the time when I am deep water bass fishing. I use basic things that are very, very successful on Erie, like the tube jig or the drop shot. But a bait that I discovered recently last fall, when I was fishing near Nanticoke, was this, or not Nanticoke, yeah, it might have been Nanticoke, this Neon Moon Eye jig by VMC and a rhythm wave, and it is very, very successful. I forgot tube jigs in my car that day, or in our truck that day. And so the only thing I had in the boat was this Neon Moon Eye jig. I'm pretty sure it's actually it's meant for walleye, but it glows in the dark and it worked very, very well. It kind of looks like a goby. It imitates a goby like the tube jig. So it is a very successful bait when in deep water smallmouth bass fishing. And I have used Ned rigs, and I've used there's a sleek jig that I like to use. I just started using it this summer, and this one's a little small for the deep water stuff, but that is my favorite baits. I actually got a tube jig rod right behind me today, so that's what I like to use.
So when people ask about deep water bass, I think it's all relative to where you are in the country
Yeah.
and what you fish. But what do you consider deep water, Avery, when you're looking for them?
Well, I consider deep water to be like 30 to 40 feet to deep. I fish them in. That's the deepest water I think I've fished them in before. Oh, actually, I might have fished them in like 50
Yep.
deep water. I went out with Derek Strew last fall to fish for them, and when I go deep water fishing, I have a fizzing kit because we are fishing them in like the 30 to 50 foot range. So you do need to fizz them once they get to the surface.
Yeah, and for those of you who've never dealt with fizzing, fizzing is basically it's to counteract barrel trauma, which happens when you bring fish up from deep water. The only time you really got to fizz a fish, though, really is if you decide to put them in your live well for an extended period of time. They will inflate, and what happens basically is their swim bladder inflates because no different than a scuba diver. Every atmosphere, your air capacity in your body will double. The fish cannot expel that when they're being fought to the surface so quickly. So if you have a bass in your live well that you've caught in deep water and he's sitting upside down and all you're seeing is pectoral fins and a white belly, he probably has barrel trauma. So having a fizzing kit, there are a bunch of great videos on fizzing bass out there. You could probably go to YouTube and find a bunch. Queen's University, the Tuft Lab, is another great resource for all that kind of stuff. Whether you're interested in finding out about gobies and how they've affected the fisheries, smallmouth migrations, and deep water fizzing, all some cool stuff as well. So continuing on with your deep water fish, 3 top techniques. You talked about the rhythm wave on the moon eye.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about a tube. What color tube is your favorite, Avery?
I like more natural colored tubes like greens and browns because they look like the gobies that are down in the rocks that the smallmouth are feeding on. So I prefer natural colored tubes. I have used like bright colored tubes before, like pinks and whites and blues, but my favorite is probably the natural browns and greens.
Okay, and then would you say drop shot would be your other favorite deep water technique?
Probably, yeah. It's probably tied second with the neon moon eye because I don't know why. I just love that one so much.
You love it because of the way they hit it. You feel it, right?
Oh, yeah. You definitely feel it.
Yeah. Yeah, throwing in, that was a 3.8 rhythm wave from Jackal you had on there. It looked like green pumpkin.
Yep.
Yeah, I fished that color. I fished prism shad, blue pearl shad, and goby. The new goby color works phenomenally on Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, Lake Simcoe. And then also golden shad is another great color. I don't know if you've tried that one or not, but
I don't know if I've tried goby or golden shad. Yeah, I got a bunch of new packages that I haven't really had a chance to try out because I've been doing a lot of shallow water like largemouth and smallmouth lately because of the warm weather.
Yep.
So yeah, I haven't really tried them out yet.
All right. So here's one, and I'm completely lost, Christina. So I'm leaving. Avery, this is all you, sweetie. You got this on your own. Have you tried the tiny child rig, and what are your thoughts on it?
I've never tried that ring. I've never even heard of it. So
me neither. Christina, if you got more information, I'll be happy to look it up while Avery's chatting. But yeah, I have no idea what a tiny child rig, unless you're rigging your kid for muskie. I know maybe that's not such a good idea. I don't think that is. Let's go with this one. Basic fishing. What was the most random fish caught on a lure?
Random. Oh, I do not know. I'm trying to think. That's a really tough question. Well, I caught my first muskie while smallmouth fishing. You probably saw it in the trailer. That was a really, really cool fish catch. We actually caught 3 muskies that day, so that was really cool. I've caught gobies, I've caught minnows, I've caught so many different interesting species, but probably the most random fish catch was the muskie one because I was not expecting that I would catch a muskie while bass fishing.
All right. Have you caught any weird ones that, while you're fishing for something that you would never expect?
No, I don't think I have.
I have it on good rumor that you caught a steelhead on a tube jig.
Oh yes, I remember that, and I've also caught a walleye on a tube jig before too, that was pretty shocking as well. Catching a walleye and a steelhead on a tube jig, I didn't expect catching those. I forgot about that actually.
It's a good thing your dad's paying attention.
Yeah.
My most random was probably a walleye on a row bag in the Niagara River.
That is really.
Yeah, which I never expected that one. So I found out Christina put a post up for the tiny child rig, and I found a picture of it. So there it is there. So it basically looks like a Ned rig with a weight on one end or a nail weight or something, and then it's hooked up a little. It's very much like a Nico, just rigged differently, I guess, kind of weedless. You'd use something like this, which is the Ned Shrooms. It doesn't have a hook on it. It's just got that keeper that you slide up underneath. So basically what it's doing, Averie, is it's a bait that keeps your bait, a weight that keeps your bait walking along the bottom like a feeding minnow.
Oh, yeah. I've used rigs like that in the past, fishing for like smallmouth and sometimes largemouth. I do like those type of rigs, but they're not my favorite because I don't know, they just aren't my favorite. I like to fish for largemouth and smallmouth with a more active, like reeling, like retrieving bait. So I have used them before, but they're just not my favorite.
All right, so here's one for you from Ariel. What's your favorite color re-range for smallmouth?
Well, I love all of the colors, but there's a mess of jerk baits right here. I really need to clean out my tackle. But the white one that you saw there is one of my favorite colors. And this one, though, is actually the new deep diving jerk bait, but I have used it in the shallow diving jerk baits, and this is my favorite color because I was fishing a tournament with my uncle, like I said earlier, last summer, and we were fishing for smallmouth in the shallow water, actually near where JP and I fished during one of the TV episodes that I filmed, and we were fishing for smallmouth, obviously, and I hooked in to a ginormous largemouth. It was close to my personal best, and I will never forget that fish catch. So that's probably why that is my favorite color, jerkbait. I absolutely love that color of jerkbait.
It's a great color, and there's, again, I mean, if you look at the entire range of Jackal jerkbait colors in the re-range series, including the new 110 MR, re-range MR, there's no matter where you fish in the country, there is a color that is going to match.
Oh yeah.
The bait fish that your fish are feeding on. I mean, the new perch is phenomenal looking and is such a game player for northern fisheries and Midwest fisheries that have that main forage being yellow perch. And the color you held up, Averie, is perfect for so many types of bait fish, including rainbow smelt, which is one of the bigger ones that a lot of these big smallmouth will feed on, even in the northern lakes. So, yeah, having a good selection of colors, always a good idea. Just some days there's certain colors are just firing better than others for sure. So here's something that I find interesting. Slag is saying the most random fish on any bait, he caught a 5.3 largemouth with a smoked sausage. Now, that's my kind of largemouth right there. That's a largemouth that knows the way to my heart.
Oh my goodness.
That's pretty good, Slag. You get a 5.3 largie on a smoked sausage.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that one belongs on the wall.
Yes.
All right. So, Luke had to add in, was that the same white one that impaled your finger?
Yes, it was the same white one that I got hooked into my thumb. That is a very interesting story. So I might as well tell that because Luke brought it up. My dad and I were filming for a commercial. I forget what commercial exactly it was, but we were filming, and after we were done filming, there was a spot that I wanted to go to while we were filming it to catch fish, and he said there weren't going to be any fish there. But I didn't believe him, so I went to that spot after we were done filming all by myself, and I cast out, and it was like the first couple casts I caught a fish. It was a really tiny largemouth. It was almost the same size as a jerkbait, but when I hooked into him, I grabbed him out of the net, and I made the mistake of not using pliers to take the jerkbait out of the fish's mouth, and it shook its head, and I got it stuck in my thumb. I actually might have a scar still on this thumb right here. And so I ended up having to go to the hospital and get it taken out because it was really deep and we couldn't push it all the way through and cut it. So I had to get 8 needles stuck inside my thumb to freeze it, and then the doctor ripped it out. It was a very bad experience, but I learned from it. And now I am always making sure that I use my pliers when taking out hooks.
It's always, Avery, in my experience, the little ones that will get you. I'm just scrolling through your pictures trying to find that shot, but I can't. I did find this one, which is a very cool picture. Let's see if I can open this one up. For those of you who heard Avery talking about flipping heavy cover with that 1 ounce tungsten, that's an example of the kind of cover she's fishing. So very, very cool. Look at you right up on the bow of the boat, getting the most height out of it. You and I had a little lesson on getting height in the boat, didn't we?
Yeah.
How much of a difference it makes from your perspective?
It makes such a big difference when you are looking for those fish. I always stand on the very top of the bow, especially when I am fishing in that thick cover, just so I can get more distance or so that I can see in the water better.
I don't think you put that picture up on yours. I think your dad might have taken the privilege of posting the picture of you with the hook in your finger.
Yeah, he did post that. My mom, I have one on my Instagram with my mom with the hook in her knee.
I've seen that one on here, yes.
She got a hook in her in one of her appendages too. So
explain to everybody how that happened, because I thought it was on something you left lying around.
Yeah, it was. So she's doing laundry downstairs, and she was near the coffee table, and there was a bunch of baits on the coffee table. I believe it was a crankbait that was lying on the coffee table, and it must have got caught on her sheet and then got caught on the couch. So she walked by the couch, and her knee skimmed the couch and ended up the hook getting caught into her knee. So that one we actually pushed through because it was in an easier spot, and we cut it and pulled it out. And that was very painful for her. So she knows how I feel too. Or I knew how she felt because she got it stuck in her knee before I got mine stuck in my thumb.
You got some great pictures here, Avery. You spent some time at a kids' derby as well, didn't you, a little while back?
Yes, I did. That's actually the one. So every year our town has a little festival, and that was the year of the festival, or the weekend of the festival at Bayfest. And so I hosted a little kids fishing derby for everybody, and that was lots of fun to fish in that to host that kids derby, because I got to see so many different familiar faces and so many people that I didn't know, and it was just a really great experience. Very, very cool.
Well, Avery, believe it or not, we've been talking for 1 hour and 5 minutes already.
Wow, it doesn't feel that long.
Doesn't feel that way. It's always good when you have a great conversation. We have a couple more questions, so are you willing to take a couple more questions here before we wrap it up?
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Mazurkowitz, the overtime is for you, sir. our good friend John Mazurkowitz loves when we go into overtime. So Christina is asking about spy baits. Looking forward to trying one. I know I've thrown a lot of spy baits. Have you had a chance to throw a bunch of them, Averie?
I love spy bait fishing. I went to Bonin, which is a reserve in Quebec, a lodge in Quebec, and we went there as a family not too long ago when lodges had just opened up, and I threw around spy bait for smallmouth in shallow water for the first time, and they absolutely loved the spy bait. It was so cool. So it is definitely one of the baits I love to throw for smallmouth in shallow water. But it was so much fun throwing the spy bait.
So what kind of advice can you give her if she's never tried it before? Averie, what were the things that you felt were important to being able to catch fish on a spy bait?
So a spy bait is a casting and retrieving bait, but you also want to let it sink once in a while. And when it sinks, the propellers on the spy bait spin and make bubbles, and it really attracts the fish, and that is one thing that I love about the spy bait.
So, and again, Christina, if you're looking to set yourself up with one, mono or straight fluoro is probably the number one. If you're looking for extra casting distance, you can always get away with a light braid. I like to use 5-pound or 8-pound Power Pro and put an 8 or 10-pound fluorocarbon leader on it. The real trick is slower is better. Much like Averie and I spoke about those big swim baits being super slow and natural, spy baits work best. The slower you can work them, the slower you can stand it, the more you'll get bit. So don't be in a rush if you want to use a spy bait. If you're in a rush, throw a jackal re-range, throw a jerk bait, throw a crankbait, something you can crank and wind. But when the fishing is tough, sometimes a slow-moving spy bait is very, very tough to beat.
Yeah.
Here's another one. Chan is asking about, he said thankfully he's never gotten hooked, but he was asking also about the Vanford. So for those of you who haven't seen the new Shimano Vanford reel, Averie, have you seen one yet?
I don't know. I've never.
No, you haven't. So the Vanford is the replacement for the Shimano CI4, the Stratic CI4. Mm-hmm. And Chan, they are just starting to ship, I believe, in the next month or so. So definitely, when you want something that is ultra lightweight, super powerful, incredibly smooth, the new Vanford is, a lot of reasons why it won Best of Show at ICAST, at Virtual ICAST this year. So, all right, Averie, I think we've run through all of the questions. A couple about Vanford, something about fish and cholesterol, which really won't make a difference. But you know what, Averie? I think overall, I just hope you continue doing what you're doing. Keep getting kids into fishing. What you're doing is so important. I know you understand it's important, and I know, your dad Ryan understands, and your whole family does, because they obviously go along with this and help you continue on this journey. But it's appreciated, and I just want to say, for someone who's in the industry, I want to say thank you for all the work you do. We love seeing all the young faces come into fishing. So.
Thank you so much, JP. I had a great time talking today, and I'd like to thank you so much. I had a great time when we went out last summer. I hope we can get out soon after it is done. I've learned a lot from you, and I'd like to thank you for that too.
Well, I'll tell you what, once I get through, I've got a couple weeks more of work left, and I know your dad's been running pretty thin at the bone. He was actually working you guys to the bone this week as well. So once we get through that, why don't we set up a time to get out on the water? Maybe I'll come down your way, and we'll go try to catch some brown fish or some green fish. Maybe we'll go frog fishing. How about we do a frog show together, Averie?
Oh, I'd love that.
All right. So maybe Ryan, you're watching, put it in the books. We're going to do a frog show. We got to do it soon, though, before it gets too cold. But again, thank you, everybody, so much for joining us for another Shimano School. Tonight, obviously, was with Averie Rose Bonin, hostess of the show Hooked. You can follow her on Facebook and on her YouTube channel at Averie Rose. So give her a follow. 13 and a half years old, taking the fishing world by storm. Averie, have a great night. Hopefully I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. You too, JP. Bye, everybody. Bye, JP.
Bye.